Hello, Barry.
Hello.
Back for more.
They're mowing the lawn outside my window, so I may have trouble hearing you until they move
I think
along.
I heard it a bit.
I didn't catch the first thing you said.
I made a snide remark. I said,
What was
back for more.
back for more? I tell you, I'm really, I won't say that I'm at the end of my tether, but I'm getting there. Hello, Heiner.
We're just barely getting started.
I don't know if Heiner's talking or not, but he's muted anyway. Here's Stacy.
Yes. Okay. So let me do the safe thing and make everybody co-host, just in case something happens to me.
Any news on your loan approval issues?
I finally got yesterday what they call the closing disclosure ordered, which frankly is about 2.5 weeks, longer than it was desired by the seller. So we'll see whether or not the seller is agreeable to the extension. They were asked by the lender yesterday to agree to extension to next Friday. So we'll see whether that happens.
Okay. I mean, if he doesn't sell, he's got to find a new buyer.
Yeah, and that'll take a lot of overhead and whatever. But the thing that makes me upset or anxious is that this market here, every zip code around here in the last year has appreciated anywhere from 12 to 14%.
Oh, wow.
So to me, the seller would be glad to strike the contract and sell at a higher price,
I see.
But in order to do that, they have to evict me. They have to then clean up the house. Then they have to list it. Then they have to wait, a few months. And the one thing I'm hoping for is that before I got here and arranged this whole deal, the seller said that the house had been on the market for 2 years. And I was the first serious person to come by and really propose something like this.
Mhm.
So if they really do try to do something with me, I'll say, hey, fine, go ahead, take the house. But then, are you willing to wait 2 years to unload it? So anyway,
He doesn't have
there's
any
no
other.
guarantee it's going to happen, but I don't know. There's still plausible way that I actually stay in the house, but there's very many plausible ways where I get sent packing. So we'll see. But thanks for asking.
You're at least paid up through July, which is 3
Yes.
weeks.
That's right. Anyway, on topics more important to this group, I again come with some prepared thoughts, but I'm very flexible. All right, Alex is here.
So what are your prepared thoughts?
Well, we'll see. I note that we've been less and less concerned about check-ins and checkouts lately. That's kind of interesting. But I still offer just in case people want to check in and check out.
For me, the value of the check-in and check-out is, well, especially the check-in, is when you don't really know people well. I think once you know people well enough, it loses its value to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Hopefully somebody's comfortable enough that if there's a pressing issue, they jump in and say, I just want to tell you that I have welts all over me from possible tick bites or spider bites, and I'm on antibiotics and it itches a lot. That's all you need to know.
Or if somebody comes and says, my dog just died yesterday,
Right.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Other than that, to me, and I'm somebody that likes talking to people, it gets a little monotonous. Like I don't really need to know, what the temperature outside is, unless it's extremely hot or extremely cold. I want to know about you, but I want to know about you that you wouldn't necessarily tell everybody else.
It's not a secret.
That's
ever
not
watched
what?
Well, I know Barry watches Lucifer. Do you remember Lucifer's favorite line when he actually leans in and starts telling people? What does he
Tell
ask
me
them?
your greatest desire.
Yes.
Yeah.
What is your deepest desire? What is your
Yeah. To
yeah
truly desire.
yeah?
Something like that.
And,
Yeah.
and then people just sort of say, I will tell you the truth. You know, that's the
Well,
whole
but
gimmick of the whole show.
here's the thing. A lot of people don't even know the truth to that question. If you
Yeah.
ask people what their deepest is, they'd be like, I don't know. I never thought of it.
You can play the 5 or 7 or 8 whys game. Why that? Why this? Why this? Why this?
And you know, his twin brother Michael has the opposite version.
I
Do you
haven't
recall that one?
watched that season yet.
Okay. Yeah, he asks about your deepest fear. So, and desires
That's
and
the one I
fears are
asked.
really very fundamental, deep elements of your psyche. And nominally, they are 180-degree inverse of each other. If you're truly
Yeah.
self-aware, they're exact inverses. But a lot of people will take their deepest fear and mentally invert it to the equivalent opposite desire, but they won't do a perfect 180.
I have a topic too for today that I would like to throw out there.
Okay, so from now on, let it be known that I will not formally ask for check-ins and check-outs on barn raising anymore. I'll document that somewhere. Okay, unless, as Stacy says, we have a newcomer, or unless somebody looks visibly not themselves. Okay.
Or unless somebody asks for it.
Okay.
Can I check in today?
Yeah. Okay. Those 3 conditions. All right. And there's Colin. Okay. Heiner, are you again here for only 30 minutes?
No, I'm planning for 60 minutes. I'm very gracious today because I heard last Saturday it was a very productive, nice session. So I was eager to find out what you learned.
Let's see, what did we do last Saturday?
I can't remember.
I think you were actually not attending. You turned it over and had to go deal with your paperwork.
Ah, was that why it was productive? Okay, all right. I will not take that personally.
I could be misremembered because you did both
you're right.
Saturday and Sunday, and I really confused what happened Saturday with what happened Sunday.
I remember we had a pretty lively Sunday.
A good
by the way,
moderator,
sorry, what was that, Alex?
a good moderator will help us keep focused on the topic. That's all.
We agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I've been trying to get us to focus on focus, and it's too hard to focus on focus. I'm not even saying I'm a good moderator, but I don't even want to do a good job moderating unless people want that.
You were about to tell us about last Saturday.
Not really, because as Barry mentioned, I was not there. But I am curious: is Thursday gone? Is Friday gone? Did it happen this week?
That happened 2 weeks ago, I think. About 2 weeks ago. The Doug ended both Thursday and Friday.
Okay.
But I just want to add,
Yeah.
I asked Doug if there was a call this Thursday, and his exact answer was not this week. So I take that to be not certain. I'm just putting it out there.
I didn't see an announcement that there wasn't going to be one. I didn't see an announcement that there was going to be one. So I was confused. Okay.
Well, my memory is hazy, but I thought I asked him like a couple of weeks ago, and he said he was discontinuing Thursday.
I remember you brought that up. Yeah, I never heard from him directly.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I could maybe find where I asked him if it's a chat.
Okay.
I would ask again because people change their minds and things come up. So that's why I'm saying when I asked him this Thursday, the answer I got was not this Thursday, which I took to be specific.
So he didn't elaborate on that then? Okay.
Correct.
Let me just see if I've got anything in Messenger on that.
Okay.
But while we're on the subject of days, I have a proposal right now I'd like to, on Friday, have a call if anybody wants to come. I'm just gonna pick one post from the GCC thread for that week. And that's gonna be the topic of discussion. So if anybody wants to come, if anybody I do need somebody, either you or Doug, I'll have to ask to set up the call for me.
Okay, just to repeat, unfortunately, Fridays, especially Friday 8 all the way to about noon, is a dense meeting time for me every week. You know, our company seems to, you know, establish a culture where Friday everything comes to a checkpoint. So unfortunately, it's going to be the most difficult day for me to participate. I'd be happy to set up the session like 2 minutes before 8, make you moderator, and then depart. Okay.
Okay, well, how about that'll be the second resort. That'll be the second resort. I'll ask Doug first if he'll do it for me. And if he can't, then I'll come back to you.
Yeah.
But Barry or anybody on the call, if you want to come, you know, like right before, I'll try to put up, I think I'm capable of this. I'll just tag what the whatever it is, whatever post that the call will be about.
Actually, would you like to prototype that? I'm asking because I made a post that got probably like 30 responses. This past week, I said something like, you know, if your notion of good and bad, right and wrong is based on religion, or if your morality, you know, is based on religion, then I claim you don't have a deep understanding of good and bad, right and wrong. And
Yeah,
that
I
got
agree.
about 30 different posts approximately, okay? And I took a lot of that. Unfortunately, there was a lot more response after I took that snapshot. I think
Sure.
Snapshot put it into a Google Doc and responded, you know, to various different points within that thread. So I thought that there was a interesting enough engagement that I actually did that. And there's some topics that I indicated were open for more elaboration / conversation. And I really like, I made a comment there at the end. I really like the engagement that that particular post has drawn. You know, people are civil, people are intelligent, people are considered. And there's a few off-topic, you know, leanings here and there, but not too many, you know. So I really like the kind of interaction that that post was generating. Anyway, that was one example. If you'd like to prototype that Friday thing, you know, that was one thing that came to mind for me because I was going to bring that up today. You know.
Okay. Well, I have a couple of others that I was thinking of. There were a couple of posts I saw. One of them was actually the because it's one of them was actually the 10 non-commandments post.
Yeah.
Because
got
there's a
some
lot in there. And I think it's more of like a basic kind of, I don't know, I think we could get somewhere on it.
You
Yeah,
know,
Doug made an interesting post first, but he's not here right now to respond to that one though.
I wanted to mention somebody, Esteban, who brought up that idea of doing something better, because that idea came from the post that was about whether or not what we were doing was right or wrong. And it was simply an argument to say, well, whether it's right or wrong is not the point. The point is it better than the previous attempt? And it's like that in the argument, you know. I suggested that the meme I wanted to share with the group was the one that says, cherish the man who's seeking the truth, beware the man who's found it. So, because that rang a bell with me. Over.
Was Esteban in GCC for a while?
He participated for a while, yes.
Okay, because I've never actually been in a live video where he was present. I've had a lot of, you know, text chat conversations with him back some years ago, but nothing much lately.
Yeah, he was summarily ejected by someone, and then that person soon thereafter left GCC also.
Oh,
And we've not yet had a consensus among the admins what's the right thing to do. I was always on record as saying that was an unfair ejection and not done with proper consideration, you know, across the various different admins. And it's been something the admins as a group, I feel, okay, is my interpretation, has not wanted to take up. I tried bringing it up a couple of times. I think other people tried to bring it up. I think Colin, Alex, maybe, but we've never actually run that story to ground. And I think that is a failure of GCC.
I remember the day we put a marker on the map to come back to it. There's a few of those. If they had a proper search term, we could, we could look at our, what do you call it, our backlog.
Yes, exactly.
There's a lot of more tools available now for administrators on Facebook.
And just one more thing, just to point out, he's actually come on at least one call that I remember after that whole incident. So,
Wait, at GCC?
yes,
Okay,
because that's how otherwise I wouldn't have known,
okay. Because I know that he can attend Zoom calls, but he was ejected from the Facebook group, so he probably couldn't rejoin the Facebook group.
Does he talk the way he writes, kind of word salad-y kind of stuff?
No,
He talks in complete sentences?
yes,
Yeah, because he can write very clear, complete sentences, very coherent, but very often he intentionally writes a different mode. He has a funky name for this other mode he uses a lot.
That's when you notice that there's been a deep thought gone into a sentence, and one that's just come off the top of your head with little thoughts gone into it. So that's the difference. That's why it stands out.
I'll have to look up the term he uses, but he will take something and do not exactly a satire or a send up, but he'll intentionally munge it in some cutesy way. And he's got I think he calls it some kind of a rendition. I forget the exact term. He does that intentionally, but he does it almost all the time. And you very rarely see him write in a coherent, essay style paragraph.
Well,
But he can
personally,
do it. He can switch
I
in and
don't
out.
recall his particular style or named it, but I do recall most of the things were, for me, hard to follow. I don't think it was objectionable. For me, it was just hard to follow.
Yeah,
correct.
exactly.
And I'll say I find that with a lot of people, not just in GCC, but in P2P and Ecology of Systems Thinkers, where I'll read the first little section and skip it, and it's not worth it.
Like, I'll have to admit, and I know this is on record, but I've already said it in my Google post. There was a very long response that Guy Taylor made to either one of Barry's comments or one of my comments in my post that I didn't really understand. I even noted in that Google Doc, I don't understand the main point here. So those are all, I mean, Colin could say, those are little places where I'm putting little flags to say, this is possible future conversation material.
I think
Actually-
what happened, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Stacy.
I think what happens a lot is someone who's been thinking about something for a long time, formulating this whole thing in their head, comes across a post or a conversation that shows them a touch point. What are you doing?
SPP.
I don't know what that means.
It's a smart people problem. Sorry.
Oh,
for distracting.
That comes, and they see a touch point where they can connect to, and that's what happens. And the rest of us are getting it out of context.
Yeah.
And yes, that is a smart people problem.
Yes.
But smart people should be smart enough to figure out how to solve that problem.
I
And they are
noted
not.
SPPs very ironically.
Yeah, I often put RE : and then what the comment is I'm referring to after that, so that the people reading my reply can see what it's in context to.
See, I think Facebook allows you to respond to the commenter to one level, but then beyond that, everything is flat. So it's another reason why I don't like Facebook as a thread conversation platform.
I don't actually blame that whole thing on Facebook. I think some of that's our fault. We also pick and choose the things that we want to address, which brings me to another topic. There was a post by, there were two posts actually by Michelle Bowens. One of them, I commented that the sad thing about the post is that everybody was focusing on the first part, which was a comparison between two things, instead of focusing on the second part, which was a solution to the problem that everybody agrees is a problem. So they were focusing on the cause of that instead of how do we change it. That's not Facebook's fault that people choose to do that. That's our fault that we choose to do that.
I found the term of art that Esteban uses. He calls it a phantom rendition. And this is his own words. A phantom rendition takes the linked article and transmutes it from problem solution to appropriate situational handlings. It's a technique that he does, on stuff that he just wants to do some kind of a transmuted send up of. He calls it a phantom rendition.
So is my
Well, I
audio
like-
any better, or is my audio still bad?
It's
What was the
good.
question?
His audio, it's fine.
Because I got some feedback that it's kind of muddy, so I was just checking to see if it was that way. Anyway, so who was it that made that last comment about the presentation? Oh yeah, Barry. So to me, that is at another level an indication that someone's using a different model. Somebody's using a different processing technique, a different, even call it a systems, they're using a different system model, and their language reflects it. That's why I think, these specific words that people use, like show, like drama, they're indicative.
Right.
They give you insight into the way the person is thinking, the way they're modeling, the way they're understanding the events or what's going on. And it also implies other expectation. If you use the word show, for example, you have expectations potentially of commercials, laugh tracks, scenes, audience reaction, timing, blocking, all this sort of thing, okay? If you use a word presentation, you have other expectations. If you have a word called discussion, if you have a word called coffee clutch, you have different expectations. So each of these words indicates different ways of creating expectations in your own mind about what's really going on. Over.
I find that interesting. You bring up the word show again, because it is important to go beyond what the word actually means to the person who's using it. It does mean something more. It probably has expectations and things attached to it. But for you to determine what those are, you could be wrong. So to me, the word show doesn't mean the laugh tracks or the commercialization or any of that stuff, but generically it would. I'm thinking, just case in point, to digress, more about being public broadcast and produced, so that there's admin things that need to be done to make it happen. Anyway, you could say it's a meeting too, but since it's broadcast to so it's sort of like I would say meeting show more than an entertainment show. See, so there's nuance. So you can always add an extra adjective, but it just, in philosophy, ends up getting you into trouble in the end anyway. So how you do understand these terms is the point, and to ask what the person means by that term. So, I think we do try to do that, and I think that's good. Oh, Glenn's waiting.
I tend to use the word publish. Make something public is to publish it. And normally you think of publication as a document, but it doesn't have to be a document. It can be any kind of carefully prepared presentation.
So yeah, it's a serious show. I would call it serious show, I guess, is what I would have to say, not an entertainment show, but it can be entertaining.
So Glenn, Kayla, welcome. We've been meandering around the morality post, the 10 commandments post, Esteban, right and wrong, truth versus people who found it, Facebook as a posting platform, whether or not we need check-ins, what is your deepest desire, words and their expectations. So we've been meandering around all of this while we've been trying to figure out what do we want to talk about today. So we actually also agreed that unless we have new people, or unless somebody really feels compelled to, we're not going to have a formal check-in round anymore since we kind of all know each other. But if somebody has a life event or a particular, emotional state, that they want to talk about, we welcome that. We're just not going to formally ask for everyone to do so. Okay. Okay, that's my 30-second way of catching you guys up on this.
Stacy's got a hand up.
You were first, Alex. Go ahead, I'll wait.
Okay, thank you. I was going to talk about the show aspect of a collaboration. Every show you see is a collaboration. You've got the producer, you've got the director, you've got the writer, you've got the people who work on the set. And so it's a collaboration of people who are focused on the job, and the good show is like that. The bad show, okay, so that's a collaboration also, but the staff weren't focused. Their heart wasn't in the job. Over.
So yeah, I'm going to follow, and that was actually one of my one of the topics I wanted to talk about has to do with what you and Colin are talking about. I can't get my hand down. I'm sorry. Okay, reactions. Okay. So, and Sam and I had this discussion, and I said I was going to bring it up because I think it's a worthwhile discussion in terms of agreements within GCC. So last week, Kayla and I got together for like a working session to see what it would be like to read something out loud. And we read a part of Doug's book out loud. My purpose, my intention was to really see how it felt to do the activity. And it was a very laid back session. We taped it because I consider that protocol for GCC, that you tape everything. But where I feel differently and what I think is open for discussion is when I come to a call like this, I expect that there might be people that are going to view it. When I do a call like I did with Kayla, we still tape it. But in my mind, I'm taping it for a different reason. In my mind, I'm taping it so that either somebody wants to join the project and they think that there might be some warm data in it that they want to capture, it's there for them. So if they would request to see it, they would watch it. Another reason might be if there's a discrepancy. If somewhere down the line, Kayla and I have different ideas of what went on, we can go back to the videotape and look. So for me, that's different. So one, I know it's going to be like, let's say Colin would call a show. It's meant to be viewed. The other one to me is really like a backup to go back to see it. And I don't know. So I asked Sam, well, why do we have to post this publicly? Because I really, for whatever reason, I didn't feel like putting it on the GCC Facebook page. I have no problem if any one of you asked to view it, that you would get it. And I guess what came up for me is, who do we owe truth to, or who do we owe transparency to? I feel I owe transparency to you guys, but do I owe it to the rest of the world? I personally don't feel like I do. So I wanted to bring it here and see what other people thought about that, because it occurred to me, which is really silly that I'm just thinking of it now, because we teach our children all the time, be careful what you do online because it will stay with you for your whole life. It occurred to me that there's a whole bunch of stuff, a whole bunch of recordings on all of us that could be taken out of context or used in a negative way. And it's something that I think is worth discussing. And I'm complete, and I see Sam's hand is up.
Anybody else want to go before I do?
Go ahead, Sam.
This is a good one.
To me, it's not a debt of transparency. To me, it's if you want to collaborate, if you want to invite discussion, if you want to invite interaction, something that's withheld does not serve to invite, right? So there's no one able to even become aware of what happened in that session. Whereas if it were made available, then there's the chance that, oh, somebody, notices a section in the transcript that says that interests me, and then engages with you, and then possibly even watches the video. So to me, I don't have the sense that, hey, what I say with one-on-ones or what I say in a group is treated separately. For me, it's all what happened. It's all part of the actual historical record. And being part of the historical record, any part of it can be examined, critiqued, admired, used as a foundation for derivative works, et cetera, et cetera. But if any part of that is gone, okay, then that is a part that, I mean, I'm gonna ask for forgiveness, but I'm gonna use this word, is in a sense hidden. And if it's hidden, then people say, okay, well, I see the rest of the 99% of this group or this person, but that 1%, what really happened there? Why was it so important that it had to be hidden? And I guess a lot of me has this notion that we're not ever going to get to a fair system of government until we really desire transparency, because counting on people's integrity apparently has not been enough, not in a capitalist society, okay? So whenever there is like positions and possible corruption and abuse of responsibility and authority, it seems like the only way to really get after that is transparency with accountability. So to me, I'm always wary when someone says, I want to withhold this. And I'm not just talking about you, Stacey. I'm talking about.
Oh, because I didn't say withhold it. I said publish it unlisted. I said publish it unlisted. If anybody wants to see it, you could send it to them. That's very different than advertising it by throwing it out to a group of, I don't even know who they are. Maybe I don't want to collaborate with them.
So the historical practice up until that formal decision to make everything public was to share all of these videos with GCC, announce it within GCC, but to actually have it in YouTube as unlisted. Okay, so that has been for years a practice. Only, let's say in the last year and a half or whatever, has it become a public video within GCC. Okay, that's a distinction. So I just wanted to let you know, if we did make it unlisted, but we still announce it to the GCC Facebook group, then in a sense, it's still being shared more widely than just between you and Kayla.
Right.
Okay.
And that's fine. I'm curious to know how other people feel about that, because, just to make another comparison, I don't need to know what your greatest fear, what your deepest desire, what you ate for dinner yesterday, and how you're getting along with your wife to know if I want to collaborate with you. That doesn't mean you're hiding that from me. And if I want to know, I can ask you. I think there's different degrees. I'm all for transparency and accountability, but I think there's different degrees, different levels. And I think it's more nuanced than all or nothing.
I think what's important is the unfolding of the collaboration effort, not what's happened in the past. In the previous videos, I mean, they're interesting to watch, but we were part of it. We were actually there, most of us, some of us, and watching that again is a waste of time as far as what we could be doing while we're doing that. We could be doing something else. We could be in another session developing an idea that's attributed to something that's gone before. Refining, improving over.
Let me ask a meta question. Are we into a free flow, or have we settled down to a topic, or are there still other topics that people want to bring up? Glenn,
you're muted.
Hello, good to see you guys. Yeah.
hey Glenn, your audio is very low to me. Is it to anybody else?
I can barely hear you.
I'm trying this new microphone here.
Aim it at you.
Is that
When you're close, we could hear you.
Yeah, when it points at you, it's best.
Do you hear me well now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's directional.
Okay. I'm trying this microphone again because I needed a new cable. But yeah, I'm always just enjoy listening to whatever is said. I've also considered how I want to participate here, and I think that maybe it's most useful for me if I try to think of some idea that I think is very interesting and relevant to everything we're concerned about or interested in, and then just share some reflections on that, and also get something into the written in Zulip, which could support it. So the thing I wanted to mention today is that I consider this situation in terms of patterns of movement in space. And I'll try to make clear what I mean by this. So this is a point of view that I've looked at that seems really interesting. So there's a big ball of life, which is planet Earth, and we just can think of it as just a ball in space, and it's enormously big, and it's obviously an enormously big space, probably infinitely big space. And on this ball, there's all kinds of life, and there's also the human life, and there's all the people and the bodies and the events and the things and the vehicles and the trees and animals and microbes, and all of the different scales are all happening at once in one unified global movement pattern. So it's one movement pattern with many movement patterns within, and many movement patterns within those. And it seems that everything can be seen in terms of movement patterns. And this ties in with this well-known word, which we still have given so little attention to, this treasure of an idea, which is the phenomenon of behavior, which I here see as the human movement pattern in space. And the behavior is the one thing we can always be influential on, we always have a responsibility for. If there's some place we can exert a relevant influence, it's through the behavior. And the behavior is an immensely rich phenomenon because it has to do with the entire body and everything within the body in interaction with everything around. But the behavior is expressed as the movement pattern of the body, which includes the movement pattern inside the body, which includes the thoughts, the emotions, the physical, chemical reactions. And all of this goes through this fundamental movement pattern from posture to posture to posture in space, which is our behaviors. And the behavior is thus a connection between physical space and the mental space. So the imagination, for example, if it can influence us, that can change our behavior. And this is where we can create new realities. So imagination is also a part of reality. It's actually something that can form reality because there's an inherent creativity that then seems to be built into all this. So it seems that the movement pattern itself of events in space is a very specific thing that we can all relate to, that we can see on a video camera, that we can measure in an accurate way, and we can also measure it with our senses and our presence. The movement pattern itself, that's not conceptual mumbo jumbo. That's something ever specific, always relevant. And then the concepts and the ideas and the language, that is also patterns of movement. And the word's meaning depends on how we receive the word. So there's an interaction between the reader and the written. So this point of view, it seems it can tie a lot together, and it can get us right back to the moment now where the behavior becomes a gate. It becomes a gate into possible futures. So that if I could become conscious of my behaviors, let's say I could even evolve the behaviors. What if those behaviors could discover completely new behaviors, which we've never even considered as possibilities? And maybe this could be a very, very simple way that we could solve all kinds of issues in one continuous movement pattern. And yeah, that's what I wanted to bring. So thank you for listening.
There's a very nice visual metaphor to go with what Glenn just said. Think of a baseball diamond and a pitcher pitching the ball at the batter. There's a strike zone, which is sort of midway, below the neck and above the waist. And if you pitch the ball in the strike zone, the batter can hit it. If you're over the batter's head, it's a waste. If you're at their feet, it's a waste. If you're wide, it's a waste. And so knowing exactly where the strike zone is for the one you're pitching to means that you're going to make a connection. You're going to say something that they react to in a constructive way. And the more you know about somebody, the more reliably you can pitch something at their strike zone, the receptive zone. And the less you know about somebody, the more likely you're going to be over their head or at their feet or wide of the mark, and you're going to pitch something that just doesn't land. And if you don't know an individual, but you know their demographic, you can try to shoot to their demographic. But that's also pretty unreliable because you don't know where they are in their demographic. So, this sort of being able to recognize where a person is, what are they receptive to? What's their frontier? What are they looking for that they're waiting for? And the more they disclose that, the more likely you can provide something that's interesting, meaningful, on target, relevant, that they can use.
I like the idea that Glenn brought up, but we have to push the envelope. And if we can push the envelope within the constraints that we have, we're humans. We're not animals. Animals can do things humans can't do. Some animals can do extraordinary things. But to see, so that we work within the constraints that we have upon us and use that to push the envelope and create something that's interesting and better and universally acceptable, and excites people, to incentivize people to act, to collaborate, to co-vision and co-create. That's where the magic is, I think. Over.
Sam's got his hand up.
So I have two responses, one to Glenn and one to Barry. Okay, Glenn, I'm leaning into your description of everything as patterns and movement and so forth, and understanding the patterns within patterns. To me, what that brings up is a way of looking at the world, which is one big, very large Fourier transform, where you basically have all the fundamental frequencies represented, and you've understood how it all basically aggregates or composes into what quote unquote the world unquote is. So it's a way of modeling the world. To me, it's a way of modeling the world that's actually orthogonal to how you want to use that way of modeling the world. You could use it for a number of different ways. It's just one way, okay? And I know that's a possible conversation topic all on its own, but let me then respond to Barry regarding, he said something that prompted me to propose another very simple model, okay? Which is people's behavior when people are going around in their daily life, okay? If they're not consciously directed with an agenda, with a direction, with a purpose, whatever, if they're just relaxed mentally, it seems like there's a stronger tendency and more of a vulnerability for past traumas, past hurts, past memories, past pains to essentially be that which controls how you ingest information, right? So something comes in, bam, you know, one pattern triggers. Something else comes in, bam, another trauma pattern triggers. And to me, this difference between whether it's your triggers that control your behavior versus whether it's your intention that controls your behavior is, to me, the distinction between unconsciousness versus consciousness, okay? If you're actually conscious about what you want to achieve, where you want to focus, who you want to interact with, how you want to go about your day, what good you want to do, then that's actually a way you channel your energy so that it's not your triggers that are controlling what you do. Without that, all you've got are just trigger patterns, to me. I mean, that's an extreme generalization, but it's a 2x2 model that I just want to put out there, stimulated by what Glenn and then you, Barry, were saying. And I think that, to me, is ripe for further discussion as well. Over.
It's called lead with your needs. If I know exactly what you need right now, I got a good chance of supplying something that's close to what you want, what you need, what you're expecting. If I haven't a clue, I'm just going to be shooting, you know, it's going to be like a shotgun. It's going to be, you know, all over the map. Sam.
To me, it's useful to be more careful than that, to me, okay? Because if you're asking me, what do I need? Is it my pain? Is it my trauma? Is it my inner child answering you? Or is it my conscious self answering you?
Right.
In other words, you know, my pain could say, you know, I want a prime rib steak. I want to go to Las Vegas. I want to whatever, okay? Whereas my conscious might respond very differently. You know, I want to create a group memory. I want to be able to focus on conversations in threaded platforms, et cetera, et cetera. So
we can do it all. We can do it all.
Careful how you ask and careful who is responding. Is it, you know, the I guess, who is it? Somebody calls it the pain. I think even the forum uses or maybe somebody else uses the term the pain body. Is it the pain body responding? The pain body is that set of patterns, that set of behaviors that's generated via childhood traumas and pains and wrongs and unfairness and abuse, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's useful to be more careful to note who you're asking and who's responding. Over.
Kayla's hand is up.
I just want to say, for me, something like that is more the ability to listen. Barry, you said something to the fact that if I know what you want, I can contribute. What if somebody doesn't want you to contribute? What if somebody just wants you to listen? You know, and that's, I just feel like when it comes to communication, that's just so basic that a lot of people miss the mark. I mean, you know, a good example of that is just these past couple of weeks. You know, I've been kid-free and I enjoy everybody's enthusiasm. And they're just like, oh, you should do this, you should do that. You've got to have all these grand plans lined up and paint the town red. Maybe I didn't want you to say that to me. Maybe I just wanted you to be a friend and just, you know, listen. And that wasn't even, you know, a part of the communication. So, you know, and who's to say, I do have grand plans. Why don't you just ask, hey, so now that you're kid-free, what are you going to do? Anyhow, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Kayla, for saying that. Before Kayla said that, I was just sitting here looking at all the male faces. And I was like, wow, there really is a difference in the way people think.
Yeah, that's why there's this possibility of creating bigger understanding
if we could just integrate all our best understandings, we could integrate and evolve.
It's interesting about listening. My father could listen for about 5 minutes. That was his maximum listening ability. It actually runs in the family. Mine's a little longer than 5 minutes, but not much more than about 10 before I just sort of get lost in the verbiage. I can read a lot better than I can listen. And that's partly because spoken words are much harder to figure out. What did they say? So if somebody says, I want you to listen, I say, well, I can reliably listen for maybe 10 minutes. Can you boil down what you want to say to 10 minutes in carefully crafted sentences that are well articulated? There's a good chance I'll capture it. Beyond that, all bets are off. Man, I think set his hand up.
You know, my son used to work for a movie production company as a video editor. And for some reason, they had this duration of 2 minutes and 20 seconds as what they thought was the magical duration, which you could actually capture somebody's attention if you filled it well enough. So all of their videos that were like trailers for things and whatever, they tried to keep to 2 minutes and 20 seconds, interestingly enough. The second data point is, if you look at TED Talks, my understanding is a TED Talk is supposed to be about 18 minutes.
Exactly.
Right? So for some reason, they feel that you can go deep into a subject and present something interesting in 18 minutes, and you can capture people's attention. Maybe it's because now they're paying to be there. Okay, so maybe that they can go from 220 to about 18 minutes, you know, if they've actually spent some money to it. So it's curious to me how different levels of understanding. Now, in a different context, if you're talking to VCs and you're saying, you know, what's your pitch on your, you know, new idea, your new company, there's this common mythical 30-second elevator pitch, you know, which most people try to get down to like 5 or 10 seconds, okay? But there's this mythical thing where if you can't explain it in an elevator with a VC going from floor to floor, you know, you ain't gonna get the guy to ever invest, okay? So there's the 30 seconds, 140 seconds, 18 minutes, what else, you know? There are lifetimes that people live and try and focus. So just as a little curious data point, we've been going almost 4 years now in GCC, and people still seem to come back for some reason, despite the unpleasantness of some of these conversations. People still seem to come back. So I'm just curious. Also, there's that duration that seems to have captured people as well. I mean, I'll explain it for myself as just it's a commitment that I made. But, you know, not everybody has made that commitment. So I'm actually curious what else is happening here. Anyway, just a few data points to throw on the table. Over.
Yeah.
I just see it as such a big possibility that we meet together for, you know, growing much faster in all kinds of ways, and learning together, sharing together, listening together. That's just really valuable in itself. But of course, I mean, yeah. Alex?
I've been told that you have 8 seconds to capture somebody's interest before they click the mouse button onto something else or swipe the screen to look at something else. And if you haven't got a good, nice background to capture their attention or sidetrack them with something going on in the background, it's even more difficult. You've got even less time to capture them. So the first 8 seconds, what you say, that's pretty critical. And I'd like to encourage each of us, before we come on to the Saturday session, to prepare an 8-second spiel that we want to present to see if it works, and see if that's the sort of thing that can say, the person watching is interested in that, they want to know more, or they click, no, I don't like that idea immediately. So you've got 8 seconds. You can see if you can work on that idea. You'd have to be very specific, Over.
At the Museum of Science, they measure the dwell time of an exhibit, how long the typical visitor spends. A typical exhibit has a dwell time of about 2 to 3 minutes. It's rare to have dwell times longer than that, unless there's really a lot of very entertaining content.
On website landing pages, there's something also called, bounce. If somebody comes and bounces off without really engaging with the material you're in, and by the way, that's a very high percentage based on a range of different factors. So it's very difficult to actually get people's attention so that they actually invest time. I just noted for the record also, when Alex said something about background and what captures attention, I don't know, it just brought up the old marketing adage, sex sells. And do we really want to go and use those techniques for capturing information? I'd rather not be going after attention myself. I'd rather be going after someone who can see through all the fluff, all the animation, all the sound, all the fireworks, and really know that there's something substantive underneath. I want somebody who's actually that discerning. Because if not, if all I have to do is to grab somebody's attention is 6 seconds of, candy, and then wonder why that person can't focus or wonder why that person can't follow a line of reasoning, that's not a great collaboration either.
So the goal is to be discerning, to discern well.
I'm looking for people who want to engage and co-create mental models and understanding, and from that basis, do some co-creation for future, and then co-creation for plans and actions. I'm not just looking for attention. Over.
So to tie that into everything we've spoken about, is it reasonable to say that we're always in a position where we can recreate ourselves into anything?
I'll say, I don't know what that question means. I don't know what recreating myself means.
Let's say you decide, let's say I decide now, okay, here I am. I'm just born again in a way. I begin life. Well, it means that here I am, I'm beginning again. And now I'm going to recreate myself from the inside out. And in that kind of way, I can create the change I want to see in the world through the being. And that could be simply by being quiet, being kind, being reasonable, not doing harm unnecessarily. It could be simple things. It could be all kinds of different things for different people. But doesn't that mean that we inherently have a possibility of re-becoming? This ties in with everything Barry's talked about, the process of becoming, but that isn't that the case? Seems to be the case. I wonder if you agree.
Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, Sam, what do you think?
In a sense, I agree with you, which is that at every moment, you can always create choices and you can always choose a choice that you create. And that's true of every millisecond, every nanosecond, okay? However, to recreate my own self kind of has this implication of, okay, I'm gonna lose everything that came before, and I'm gonna start from a tabula rasa, blank slate, etc. So to me, that actually dismisses the value of all of that history, all of those lessons learned, all of those insights, all of those connections, all of those associations, all of those experiences. So to me, it's unnecessary. And besides, it's impossible. So to me, it comes close to being, and I, again, going to be a little bit pokey about this, a vacuous statement.
What if you didn't? lose
Can I
anything.
define that term first for those who actually don't
Yeah.
use that term? A vacuous statement is if A, then B, but A never is true. And in which case now the statement is vacuous because it has no value because it will never apply in life.
Yeah.
That
There's
is
many
the
of
definition
those.
of a vacuous statement. So if I can never start afresh, if I can never start anew, then to me, it's not useful to consider that question. So I'm being a
Well,
little bit pokey here, Glenn.
Well, what if starting anew meant you didn't lose anything, but you can have everything in terms of all your understanding, all your ideas, all your
Yeah.
points of view.
I'm there.
You can have that, but
I'm there with
then
that, Glenn.
but that's really not the issue. But the point was just, we seem to have inherently an opportunity at every moment to choose to be in a new way every single morning. And that seems to be the choice which really determines what happens. So it's the most important thing, practically speaking, right? But then it also seems to be the case that there's a creative potential here as well, that we, we might not know who we are or who we could be, and that we, can also through that journey learn more about ourselves, right? So there's also that opportunity, and we try to do that. But the point I wanted to get to is, isn't it then at the same time, as there are these longer patterns across different time scales happening, at the same time there always is at every moment at the same time an opportunity of somehow collecting oneself or coming really back to reality, or sort of coming into a harmony. Perhaps it's a very big thing, right? But it seems to be that is right space of possibility at every moment, right? So that's why I keep bringing up this about patterns of movement and behavior, because that kind of is a way to make this very concrete, and I think it ties in with everything. And but the thing I hear, what I thought was so interesting is that it seems to be that there's this immense creative potential at every moment that we could renew, and we might have a larger freedom of action in terms of the behavior if we simply somehow become aware of it. So it's like a kind of a magic thing. By becoming aware, it becomes more realizable, right? I see you're nodding, Sam. You think this makes sense now?
I am, but Stacy's first, and then Alex, and then me.
So I hear and I understand what Glenn is saying. And I'm somebody that, the best times in my life were the periods in my life where I've worked with a group to help understand better who I am, and they help understand better how I'm all for that. That being said, not everybody is made that way, and not everybody is going to embark upon that path. So my concern is, how do we work together with people whose process is different? Now, all through my growing up, my mother used to say to me, the only behavior you can change is your own. Now, what she didn't include, but what I know to be true, is by changing your own behavior, the behavior of the people around you does change. So that's part of what I want to say. The other part of what I want to say has to do with going back to the basics. Glenn, in the last thing that you said, the one thing that really stood out for me is you mentioned how the way a person how did you say it? A word's meaning will depend on the person and the way they're hearing it.
Yeah, exactly. How we interact with the word. Yeah.
So because there's so many of us with so many different life experiences and so many of our own personal mental models, I try to focus more on prevention for conflicts. And one of the biggest things that I see that causes conflict is that we link ideas together. So somebody puts up something and they have two ideas in it. I agree with one of them. We wind up debating that one because I'm not willing to accept the second without the first. Whereas if just the first idea were there and we agreed on that, then we can go to the next point. So the best way, I don't know if you could visualize it using these words, but within those patterns you're talking about, I think we need room for forking and then cycling back, because we're so many different things in so many different situations, and there's no room. I don't see the system we're in as having a room to flow freely within those patterns. And I think there does need to be more room. Yeah, it's like, I wish we behaved more like nature. I wish that we were all our own trees or bushes, bending when we needed to move closer to the sun, but not being so concerned over what somebody else was doing over there. Yeah, I don't want to get too, I'll stop for now.
I love it. It's the way we learn when we're willing to be corrected. And I learned something last week, from Barry when I was bearing inaccurate witness, and that was a lesson, because it's dependable on how accurately we bear witness. If we believe something's correct, we can go ahead and do it. Don't have any fear. Don't let it hold you back. If somebody picks it up and says, hey, that's not correct, then accept that and change your view. Otherwise, you're stuck in a rut of believing that you're right. So it's worth researching that. And that's what Stacey mentioned, being able to apply ourselves more naturally means being open and willing to step forward and relate what our ideals are and what our objectives are. Because some people have great ones and some people are not so great. If someone in the group is not doing anything, just be here to be inquisitive, they're dragging us backwards or holding the group back from progressing. I don't think so, because this is a place where we find a spot for those people. It's like the suggestion that we have a group of tutorials, a number of tutorials that are available for us to direct people to, who turn up here and have grand ideas, but no focus and no real ability to collaborate with others who are working on something similar or want to work with them on their idea. It's like to have these sprouts. Over.
Okay, thanks, Alex. May I go next?
Yeah.
So were you done or not? You still have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. So I have two responses, one to Glenn and one to Stacey, okay? Again, it's Glenn, back to this creating a new idea. See, these trigger patterns, which all of us have, I mentioned that they are in control if we don't use intention and consciousness to, in a sense, act as a dampening factor on those trigger patterns and to amplify our intentions. And I know that many different groups, including the forum, teach you ways to do this, okay? But I think most people are not yet learning from the forum or landmark or productive learning and leisure or anything in this so-called success industry, And a lot of a guy that started it was what is it, Tony? What's his name? The tall, loud guy,
Robbins.
Huh?
Tony Robbins?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Tony
Tony
Robbins.
Robbins.
Yeah. He kind of like, made this whole success industry a
He's
thing.
quite a character, that guy.
So anyway, I just wanted to say, this is why I do think that for us to get, and I'm using the us word, and I'm also using the productive word, okay? It's for us to get someplace, to have some movement, okay? To actually have a direction. We need to understand how we manage these triggers. And this is why I've been diametrically opposed to this practice of, oh, let's always glom onto somebody's trigger and let's take care of that person, because that's what a community can do around a kitchen table, around a hearth. That's all fine. If you've got family to take care of, that's exactly the right thing to do. But if you've got a future to create or co-create, if you've got models that you want to bounce off each other, if you want very complex systems thinking about understanding the world, then to me, there's a different place to do that care and feeding of triggers. And I just want to, I hope this is the last time I make that point, okay? Okay, the second thing I wanted to say is a response to Stacy, okay? That in forums like this one, where our protocol is only one speaker at a time, then everybody has to go through this very narrow, one speaker wide path, okay? Stacy goes, then I go, then Alex goes, then Glenn goes, then Barry goes. And for any of this tracking that Stacy's talking about, like, how do I respond to Glenn? How do I then respond to Alex? How do I respond to Barry? He was like 5 turns ago. How do I respond to what Sam said 17 turns ago? You can't do that easily. In fact, it's almost impossible for us to do that in a real-time serialized channel, which is why I always bring up this need, I feel a need, okay, for a conversation space in written form that's asynchronous, where we can all be contributing asynchronously, concurrently, where we're not all saying, okay, Barry, it's your time to type. And while you're typing, nobody else can type. And then, okay, now, Glenn, it's your time to type, okay? That's not the nature of a threaded conversation forum. And that's why I think it's more conducive in many ways as an augmentation of this real-time format. I think we can learn to use all different formats. I'm not saying we should only use that one, but I'm saying we lose a lot by only channeling our interaction through this one speaker wide forum, which is Zoom or Skype or Teams.
Well,
okay.
What if we simply ask a few questions? Why can't we try that instead of all those long speeches? Questions, responses, questions, responses.
Because I'll interrupt, because
all
long speeches
questions.
are necessary. Short contributions are okay for simple ideas.
But how do we
Establish
understand?
more connection may require a longer contribution. If you're still being concise, it could still take more time.
How do we even understand each other if we don't dig deeper? That's the problem. That's why these same subjects come up over and over again, and we never get through them because we don't question. We need to go deeper into the subjects and have more forward and back instead of only the long speeches, right? Isn't that necessary if we're going to, it's going to work? Otherwise, it's just misunderstandings. It's the 5 threads hanging in the air. You never get to follow up. One speech at a time, it doesn't work. There has to be a questioning and responding, right?
Well, maybe. I'm thinking again,
So
my
I'm
drum.
noting that Stacy and Barry have their hands up.
Go ahead, guys. I'm going to just
Barry.
bang the same drum anyway.
And Barry can go first.
I wanted to elaborate on what Sam said about the difference of the affordances of Zoom, where only one person can talk at a time in a stretched out sequence, versus a threaded text conversation where you can have different parts of the text being prepared by different people simultaneously. When I read a paragraph or two in text, There's something I can do that I can't do here in Zoom. I can do my homework. I can read something, I can scratch my head, I can think about it, I can look some stuff up, process it, I can do my homework before I respond to it. And so I might not respond to it for hours or even days, but when I respond, it's a very carefully crafted response that's been thought through. Here in Zoom, I don't have that option. And so my response would be off the top of my head and not very well researched or thought out. And that's really why personally I like the text version of it better.
Colin or Stacy?
Colin can go.
Yeah, thanks, Stacy. I think it comes down to being prepared for the frame of the conversation you're in, because I'm trying to concentrate on the frame. So if the frame keeps shifting, people get frustrated. We could spend 15 minutes of every show doing something extremely complicated with a huge schematic. And every show we go back to that map. For 15 minutes, we move a little bit further. We could probably, in the amount of time we've spent, figure out how rockets work. So it's a matter of understanding the frame you're in so that you can stand the frustration of what detail is necessary. So I think fighting frustration triggers is a good signal to see what's missing in understanding the framing of what you're in, if it's working for you. Are you blocked, for example? Back to the emotional triggers. That's another world altogether. And I think in GCC, it's been over-conflated, the difference between an intellectual block, a collaboration block, a society working with I'm going to go back to my Sapiens book. The word is, there's intersubjective, right? That's the subjective that's between us. It's not my bias, but it's our intersubjectivity. Are we following along? Can we read the room? Do we know the story? So that's the context, and that's the same drum over and over again. So if we start the show and say, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. Sam is going to, for the first, like how we were doing the focus shows, somebody's going to present their idea, like Barry, he still got a second one to present, I remember. So somewhere I have an expectation that Barry's going to be presenting more information. When he does, the format of that exchange is going to be much different than what I feel the format is right now. Being aware of that, as Glenn says, can allow for better behavior. When we're frustrated, we are in bad behavior. So maybe those are the triggers we're after: frustration triggers and danger triggers. And the personal triggers, those are good too, but that was where I felt that some people might have some skills here that would be a sprout. Like the appreciators group was a sprout for more personal type stuff, if you ask me. And I find Doug tends to go a lot more personal because it's all related, right? But I think the boundaries of what I want to talk about personally online are more on the side of intellectual problems, not on personal problems. Those are the boundaries I'm looking for. So if I'm crossing a boundary intellectually, am I trying to explain something that somebody just wanted me to listen to how they feel? And I could say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to try to mansplain or whatever. I think Kayla brought that up. Sometimes she brings things up and a smart people problem happens where everybody says, oh, I can solve that for you. I know what you should do. When really they're in that personal area. So I'm probably susceptible to make that mistake of being too literal with the person's problem, because I'm not here to solve people's personal problems. I expect a private message when that happens. I don't expect to do my personal business online. Now, the thing about Esteban, that's kind of on both, it kind of crosses a line. Esteban, he would elaborate like that, clever, like do his, like Barry was saying, he's got some kind of a way he likes to build on things. And he had a mantra, do our better best. So, maybe, if we can find a way to channel the context of what the person is doing and then keep them from frustrating other people when they go out of lines of the boundaries. Like, okay, that's not what I meant. That was a problem between me and Barry. I could not find a way to line the boundaries. Barry was bound determined to service me in a certain way, and nobly and well is, and kind of takes offense when I don't accept it. Well, if I would have asked for it, I think he should take offense. Maybe I asked for something different. And that's where the conversation is, framing that expectations for the conversation or discussion so that frustration is held at bay. Anyway, Josh is here. Welcome, Daddy.
Hey, welcome, Josh. Good to
Hey.
see you.
I think Stacy, I think you're next.
Yeah, a couple of points. So one, to go back to the idea of bearing accurate witness, very simply, it would be helpful if people learned how to bear accurate witness without including their opinion of what the facts of what they saw mean. Because that's something that is widespread, and I see that as a really big problem. That's not accurate witness if you're adding the reasoning behind it. What was the second thing? There were a few things, but I think that my frustration level built when I realized that I really needed to ask, what is your idea of success? Because I mean, Sam, you posted something today. I was trying to remember. It was a meme about how something to the effect of people who don't have deep satisfaction in their lives, like go out and buy things, something like that. Go out and, or need money to buy experiences. Do you remember what that meme was?
I'll see if I can find it. Yeah, I remember posting it. Let me not quote it. Let me find it.
Because the point is, so often I see this, what feels to me like people saying, we have to be serious. There's things to do, and there is no room for people problems in our very serious process. And people problems are our very serious process. And they are part of everything we do from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep, and they cannot nor should they be separated. Should we modify some of the practices as the way we've been doing? Yes, but it's not an either or. It's how do we do both in a productive way? And I think I'm complete for now.
Is Alex
I've got a short story about that. It's about that young guy looking for the ultimate truth, looking for the ultimate high. He went to India, and when he arrived at the guru's cave up in the hills, where he was directed to go to find the answer, he found the guru sitting outside his cave, and he approached him, and the guru saw him coming. He said, "Hello, young man, what can I do for you?" And the young guy explained that he was looking for the ultimate truth, the ultimate answer to life, the universe, and everything. He was looking for the ultimate high, actually. And his friends said to go to India and find out. They said, "You've been trying all these drugs and uppers and chemicals, not working." So he did. And the guru said, the truth is within yourself. And he said, "What?" He said, "I just spent $3,000 traveling over here from New York to India, climbed 3 days to get up here in the hills through the Himalayas, and you say it's within yourself." And the guru looked at him and said, "Well, there's another way you can find it, but you'll have to go back down the mountain. There's a lake in the forest down there, and once every year, a flower blooms on a tree that's on that island in the middle of the lake. If you get that flower the day it blooms and eat the core out of it, you'll have the ultimate high." And he said, "You got to be careful though, because the crocodiles and the tigers." But the guy wrote the directions down and made a mud map and stuck it in his backpack and went off happy. He left the guru $100 note on the rock, which blew away in the wind a short time later. And as he was walking away, the guru said to himself, "Well, sometimes it's easier to tell people bullshit than it is to tell them the truth."
Yeah, that's a great story.
Another way to say that is another saying that says the only Zen you're going to find at the top of a mountain is the Zen you bring with you.
Yeah, you have to bring some with you. Yeah.
So Stacy, is that I just posted a very ugly link. Is that the posting you're
Yes, that was it. It was, it's off my screen. It was when people don't find, can you read it? Because I don't have it in front of me.
It's the Viktor Frankl quote.
Yes.
If a person can't find meaning, they have to find, pleasure or something like that. But
When a person,
yeah.
when a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure. Viktor Frankl.
Right. So when I read it, it just seemed to me that, again, I'm mostly focused on America. Most of America can't seem to find a deep sense of meaning and are distracting themselves. And how do we, as far as I'm concerned, how do we create something new? How do we create a system that finding a deep sense of meaning doesn't mean that you can't, you can't afford to pay for the roof over your head, or you can't afford to take care of your family. And I'm not, so Sam, you put capitalism, consumerism. So I guess what I'm saying is, even when I hear certain people talk about what we create, they're still using those same models that don't give back to the individual. It's almost like, the way we, I can't even, I have too many things in my head right now. I can't even articulate it. I just, we need more questions. We need more asking, what is it that you need? Not what can I give you? Because maybe I can't give you what you want, but what do you need? Because if you can articulate what you need, and that's for your benefit, just to be able to articulate it, then maybe we can find somebody else that can help you if it's not me. But again, a person needs to know what they need. And a lot of times we don't.
I know that's one thing I don't need, and that is things, because you can't take it with you. But, it'd be nice to have a condo in the Caribbean. So if you want success in life, you need to be able to comprehend the fact that it's not the wealth that you incur yourself by your own clever ambition or whatever, your own intelligence. It's the heart, the feeling you have about the heart space that you share with close friends. If you can get that bit right, the rest will follow, and you'll have the success you were searching for. Over.
But if it were that simple, we wouldn't have most of the world thinking otherwise. So it's not that simple, because I'll tell you, I'm not willing to give up my place. I'm not willing to say, you know what? I don't need material things. I'm giving up my condo here. I'm going to take a backpack and, it's not that easy. And I don't know that okay, let me try to calm down and say what I'm really feeling. What I'm really feeling is that we've gone into two different silos. There are people that really put a high value on material goods and material wealth. And even when they're working in a way that they say they want to make the world a better place, or they might not even be saying that. These might be the people that are really focused on, look, everybody has that same opportunity. This is what I want. This is what I'm going to do. Then we have people, and they tend to be more the people that we travel in our circles here in GCC and whatever, that really are focused on making the world a better place, whatever that might mean. And they kind of push away the idea of profit and money, which is really foolish, because we need to be able to sustain ourselves. So if we look at everything that's of a material nature and we say, oh, that's bad, we don't want it in our model, we're kind of hurting our own creation. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but
Perfect sense. Yeah.
Well, I did express it this way. You asked what I need. I need, and I'm reading from myself, I need a global governance model that's not fundamentally predicated by capitalism and that profit is everything. Okay. I need a global governance model that places the planet's health higher than profit and capitalist interests. Note that when I say it that way, it's not saying profit and capitalist interests need to go to zero. I need the planet's health to be valued higher than that, is my point. Okay.
I need that. to-
Josh and Stacy have their hands up, and probably Glenn also.
I also need that.
can I just ask one question quick, Josh? Thank you. So once you get this global governance model, then what?
That
What
is a
do
good
we-
question. I would assume that part of creating that global governance model is to actually use it. There's no sense in creating it without actually using it.
So just remember, you just used the word assume.
I did.
Okay.
So what is a government?
Josh's hand is up though. He let me go first.
It's okay. I was just coming to check in on Sam and see how you're doing with your house and if you're okay. I just want to check in and see how you're doing.
Yeah, what's happening with that?
Okay, I'll do 10 seconds. I got a closing disclosure yesterday. It's 2.5 weeks past when the seller actually wanted it. We've asked the seller for a 1 week extension till next Friday. There's no telling whether or not they're going to agree. That's my current state, however. So thanks for asking, and that's the short summary. Okay.
So you're in holding. Okay.
Yes.
Just checking, making sure you're okay.
Thanks a lot.
And yeah, and as far as global governance goes, it's going to happen. No one's going to model it. It's just going to happen, and it's going to take a lot of time. But we got here for 2,000 years. We got to this global governance model, and we got a bomb that went off and 2 world wars, and we're still trying to figure out how to all share commerce and share economies and stuff like that. So we're figuring it out. Anyway, I'm complete.
I just want to flag that governance is one of those concepts that have a conceptual meaning. So already then there's many opportunities for people just having parallel meanings of what governance is, and but are we really speaking about human choices, the way people live, right? So what's governance? I just wanted to flag that because that's always hanging in the air here.
Barry, do you want to go first?
Yeah, because I wanted to answer Glenn. Another term that goes along with governance is to say that a system is well regulated. A well-regulated system is a well-governed system. And traditionally, you had a person called a governor whose job it was to figure out how to regulate a system so that it was well-regulated, well-governed. Now, if you try to regulate a system of people, that's a really hard problem. And so you start with a much simpler example. How do you regulate a machine? Like a steam engine, for example. Steam engine, you want it to run at a constant speed and provide the amount of power that you need for the job. And they developed a device called a governor for the steam engine. Okay, and it says, how fast is the steam engine spinning now? Is it spinning too fast or too slow? How do I regulate it so that it spins at the right speed to provide the energy I need for the work to be done? And the governor is actually a physical device. You can look up a diagram. This is motion in time and space. Maybe you've seen it, Glenn. It's a little arm with two arms with 2 balls that spin around. And as they spin faster and faster, they go out. Okay. And as they go out, they move a lever that regulates the amount of fuel going in to the machine. the amount of steam going in. So if it's going too fast and these balls go too high, they choke off the amount of fuel, the steam. And if they're going too slow and they fall down, the lever that's connected gives it more juice. So that was the very first governor. It was a very simple mechanical device for the steam engine. So that's one thing. What the regulator did is it measured the true speed. It bore accurate witness to the speed. And that information didn't go into an opinion-making system. It just went into adjusting the arm for how much fuel was going to go in. And if you set it up right, it would run at a constant speed. This is what you wanted. Now, the next thing up from a simple steam engine is, well, the next model that I use, which is not yet people, is how do our computers, our machines on the internet regulate themselves? Because the machines are talking to each other over the internet. And that regulation mechanism was invented about, 50, 60 years ago. And the technique that was invented was called protocols. They developed a system of protocols called internet protocols. And there's a very deep and powerful idea. What does it mean to not just use simple rules, but something a little more sophisticated called protocols and functions? And so if you study, how did you regulate so the machines on the internet don't start smacking each other, blowing each other away? They developed a very carefully crafted system of protocols and functions. That's an amazingly deep, powerful mathematical idea that us humans could stand to study and learn from. Because humans are still back in this old world of very simple rules. If this, do that. If then or else. So we're stuck in a 5,000-year-old regulatory mechanism that's dysfunctional, anachronistic, violent, doesn't work. And so you look at how engineers and network planners came up with regulatory mechanisms that govern systems that are not yet human, but they're getting pretty sophisticated, pretty complex. And my feeling is that we can invent a governance system for humans, human cultures, human communities that borrow these very good ideas from engineering and internet protocols, and building feedback systems that are based on the model of how humans behave. If you have a model of how humans behave, you can solve the model for best regulatory mechanisms.
And that model can be three-dimensional as well.
Absolutely, and abstract.
And software, three-dimensional software as well.
So that's my suggestion, is borrow ideas from where we have well-regulated systems already.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Suggestion, that was
awesome.
My quick suggestion was for Stacey about the 10 suggestions, the list of 10 items, because it's like the 12 rules for living that Jordan Peterson put out. He's written a new book and another 12 rules for coexisting. It's a good idea for us to do a homework project, and each of us come up with our own list of 12 things we think are good for governing, collaborating efforts and focusing. Yes. So yes, I would like to help with that and incorporate some of the things that are on the 10 rules list that Stacey posted.
That would be awesome to do.
Somebody posted over.
So, Heiner, were you before me?
Heiner's next, and then Sam.
Before me.
Maybe I was. I really enjoyed the discussion the last hour or so. And I want to go back to what Barry said. You see, this was the approach going from system sciences to cybernetics. And then they found out, Wiener, Animal, and the Machine, that it was still this reductionistic thing. But now we are going to biocybernetics, cultural cybernetics. And there is actually where I'm struggling with since many, many years, how to really make it comprehensible for the humans. That's why I introduce this cognitive or mental models, not just physical models. And I must say you, Barry was with me in some sessions of some people who are really hardcore scientists, that they all understand that with AI alone, and there is general intelligence, there is super intelligence, without the human dimensions, we are getting into very, very strange worlds. And to make it comprehensible and shareable, that is where I feel my work is, and where I feel our group's variety, the richness of being so different, is really a treasure. And that is what I want to discuss tomorrow with Doug. Leave or stay, why the heck I'm still around in this diverse, crazy hodgepodge, doing experiments without really tackling the challenges. So we have no comments, but try to talk big. And then the human come in the way, and then we don't have a global context. So we are all in our Worms house, sweet isolation. So it is a wonder that we are still meeting. That is what I wanted to say. And again, I talk too much.
Thank you. Awesome. I need to go a little earlier today. Sorry, guys. Love being here.
So is it my turn?
Yes, Sam's
Okay.
next.
I wanted to refer back to Barry's notion about protocols, okay? I think that is spot on. And I think, by the way, the protocols were derived out of a lot of systemic and mathematical thinking. You know, you can't build something like a global worldwide telephone switch without understanding the systemic effects, routing, impacts, gateways, flow, and you have to model it. And there's some pretty good mathematical models that you had to create in order to do that. And once all those complex models about flow and randomness, randomity, whatever, then you say, okay, if I don't control the entire network and somebody else over there controls part of the network, I don't control them, they don't control me. That's the question that derives this thinking around protocols. How do we engage? How do we act with each other? How do we behave? One of Glenn's favorite words, okay? But the protocols didn't just appear. You know, 4 octets together didn't just appear because it made sense to just one individual. It was a lot of modeling. You had to understand subnets, you had to understand visibility, you had to understand, you know, forwarding in order for this to actually work globally. So this, in a sense, is a minor trigger for me that I'm just gonna allow myself to wallow in a little bit, which is every time I hear people say, oh, I don't need math, or I don't need chemistry, or I don't need science, what the fuck are they doing on the internet? You know, you don't realize that somebody had to be able to think these things and create these models and derive these results so that you could be looking at cats on the internet or doing a flame war on the internet. You know, so all these people saying, I don't need math, I don't need to know algebra, I don't need to know this, that just reveals the level of non-education. And yes, I'll say stupidity that's allowed to graduate from schools. And those are the people who are allowed to vote. Sorry, I'm gonna tone it down a little bit now, okay? And I'll dampen myself, okay? And just to say, this lack of appreciation for systemic thinking, for critical thinking, for mathematical reasoning is so transparent when you hear people, when you see people say these stupid things. I'll end here. Sorry, over. That was not elegant. That was not polite. Sorry.
See, now Stacy would say, well, that's where that could be used against you.
I welcome it. I welcome it.
Yeah. Well, this is
I
it. Like, we're
welcome
here.
Lincoln's statement, which says, tell the measure of a man by what makes him angry.
Well, yeah, find the frustration, like I was saying earlier, but
You
not
didn't
only
say anything
that.
about women. You only said men, by the way.
Yeah, well, and I also like it when Alex switched from talking about what he didn't want to see, that was general without a specific example, to things that he does like to see. So I think that was part of Esteban's message for the better best, is to speak positively. I think that was one of the messages that he brought. So, you know, at certain levels, we have to know when to look at the person or reach out to them and say, no, you're losing me. We're not on the same page, right? This is, you know, if we go further with this discussion, it's just going to get worse. What are we trying to achieve here? I found that if people had that foresight, I don't think I would have gotten to many arguments, because, you know, once we realize what's at stake and what we're trying to achieve, then the arguments become kind of petty if you stand back and look at it. And when they're not petty, that's when you really have to craft and think of a good way to build a story around it, so you're not pissing everybody off. And that's why I didn't comment on Sam's religion post this time, because, you know, what more do I have to say about that I haven't already said, you know? And are we in that idiot zone anyway, where I'm spending time on, you know, shallow thinking? Because it's when science gets challenged by woo that there's a problem, not when science gets challenged by woo woo. Woo woo is just ridiculous, right? That's the idiot land. So if you find people in woo woo, we can try to help them, but we're not going to give them a lot of time. But when people are in, you know, in the unknown zone that Glenn likes to fly in, and, you know, that's really interesting here. And there's no math to wrap around that, or none that we can say works yet. You know, Sam says we can use math for everything. Heiner says maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I don't know if I got that conversation correct, but it is within that human element that AI can't do it all. And that, you know, when do the personal problems cross over with the logical problems in a group and collaboration? And how do we deal with that without bringing that person center stage and we're going to fix you and we're going to fix the GCC? Like, I think once we get our pace of doing what it is that we're interested in, which is what I'm doing, and I'm having some great success. I'm having a lot of fun with what I'm doing for video stuff. So, you know, I want to talk about that stuff and bring that forward. And I'm interested in all the stuff that you guys do that you want to bring forward. So the more we can talk positive and try to, you know, see if our puzzle pieces can connect or not, without assuming they have to, and with, you know, having the maturity to know what's being asked for without having to go into frustration land. So there has to be a card as, I'm thinking there has to be some symbols that we can use to keep the framing of the diversity of our conversations in line, because they go all over the place. So protocols are meant for that. Once you understand what it is you want to communicate and kind of the environment it's going to be communicated in, then you can write some protocols. So I'm looking at the protocol bag saying, well, before we put anything in the protocol bag, we got to know what it is we're trying to communicate signal wise. Like what's our bandwidth, and, you know, what's the framework, you know, what's the eyes from the fish that a Heiner likes, you know, like, have we asked the fish what's going on? Like what Barry would call the accurate witness. That fish is witnessing from many, many angles. So anyway, yeah, I think protocols are great. I think looking towards frustrations as guideposts is interesting. Arguing with each other and going to 14 is not necessary unless there's something really at danger. And I don't think we should, you know, I think we should be positive towards each other. And when it starts to get negative, I think that as a group, we should be able to root that out with deciding whether it's important that we get negative, because typically getting positive is a lot more helpful. So anyway, that's all I got to say about that.
Can I just mention that the magnet has a positive end and a negative end? So if we think of ourselves as magnets, incorporating 100% of the structure, we have negative and positive ends as well. Over.
So I think the theme is, how do we communicate our story, and do we have a story? And what are those stories? Because I'm sure we do. And so Stacy says, well, I had communicated a story with Kayla. People here locally are can listen to it. I think it might be useful, but I don't want to spread it worldwide. And I'm thinking, well, why? And because I feel the same way. So I'm thinking, why? Maybe it's because it's not to a state of production readiness that I feel would show what I want it to show. So if it's just raw and people are going to take the raw pieces and say, oh, he's just working through it, that's fine. But if somebody's going to say, oh, no, his final answer is he doesn't know, it's like, okay, thank you very much. Why did I even come? So it's like, what is it used for? And so what are our deliverables? What do we see as deliverables? When do we know it's done? Back to that conversation. Thanks. And I think I saw Josh. I think maybe just a thumbs up, or maybe he wanted to say something, Josh.
I'm really just listening, just taking it in. I have a million thoughts, but I don't know how I can add to the conversation when we're all figuring out what topics we're talking about. I'm just seeing us jump all over the map. So I'm just listening, and I feel like everyone's has a lot going on in their lives, and we're just all trying to share with each other. That's the feeling that I get, and I appreciate it.
You asked a personal question of Sam earlier, and if you don't mind sharing, how is it being a dad?
It's exhausting. She went through a huge growth spurt yesterday, and now she was shifting from 2 hours, meaning like feeding, going to sleep for an hour and 20, and then feeding again. And now it's like more like a 3-hour cycle. So she went through like a huge, like I put her in the little rocker thing and I went, holy shit, she grew like at least a third. And I'm like, who is this kid? Like, I don't even know who she is now after yesterday. And her neck is more stronger. So she's whacking her head against my chest. And like, she was doing Woody Woodpecker yesterday. So she was like, give me the breast. And I'm like, I don't have a breast for you. I'm sorry. You can suck on my shoulder all you want, but there's no breast there. So yeah, it's that 3.5 week growth spurt thing, and I'm waiting for it to settle down after 6 weeks. So it's going to be hell for the next 2 weeks. So that's how it's going. But she's a cutie and annoying as hell.
So do I hear
about 20 years?
Do I hear you need some breast, what do you call that, prosthesis that you can use? The bottle works, but
yeah, it's about the amazing thing actually is for breastfeeding that the more she wants, the more she's signaling to the mom, and the more flow of milk, and it's a different flow. And as that shifts and changes, knowing that exchange between the child and the mom is quite fascinating, because it's a lot of chemical exchange, and it's also, learning each other's needs. And it's fascinating to watch. At the same time, I'm like, please, if there's any extra, pump it out, put it in a bottle so I can let you get some sleep. That's what I keep saying to Cusella, like, so I can feed her out of a bottle at some point. We got these special nipples that look like a woman's breast, but we haven't done that yet. And I'm waiting for that to happen at some point so she can get an actual 4 hours of straight sleep. And so, yeah, it's
awesome.
You asked where I'm at, that's where I'm at. I woke up this morning, my mom is here, and she's observing Silence Day she's a follower of Meher Baba, and he took silence for 35 years in his life. So at this day every year, followers of Meher Baba take a silence day. So she's quietly sitting there ready to hold the baby, and she just needs to calm down enough to go to sleep for an hour or so.
So how much did your world grow? Like, if you could put it in a pie chart, like, did you lose anything? And how much did it grow?
Here, I'll just physically show you if I can turn the camera around. All those boxes at the end of the porch there have to be broken down into cardboard over here. And a whole crap load of stuff is here. And I'm annoyed at Amazon with all these boxes, and I'm trying to repurpose them into art so I don't have to throw them into recycling or the landfill. And how much did it grow? I don't know. I feel more like I'm in prison, to be honest. This is first 3 months, I think, is like the third trimester. I mean, the fourth trimester, which is like a prison of she's still growing, but not inside of Cusella's tummy.
Yeah.
So ask me that question 3 months from now. I'll tell you if I grew.
And as a grandfather, because I find as a grandfather, it really has that that recursive effect, obviously, but you know, and spiritually, you know, it's what you take for granted and how special it is. Anyway, congratulations.
Oh, congratulations on being a grandfather. I hope one day I'll get to that point. And like you guys that have kids, it's a thing. I'm just trying to I'm so grateful. I mean, I'm in very joyous, but at the same time, I told Cusella I don't ever want to have kids, and I was very clear about that. And I know what it takes to raise kids because I've helped with several kids, including my little brother when I was 13. And it's a lot of work, and it takes a lot of patience and practice and a lot of love towards a little being to help them grow in their life. And I think if we can all remember that we were all little babies too, so we're just babies grown up. I think that's one thing that comes to my mind, is that we're all just babies who grew up and had different experiences, and we're all just trying to eat and sleep and grow our little brains. So, yep. But other than that, I've been on some amazing conversations with neuropsychologists talking about these huge advancements in the brain. And I think that's something that is worth talking about, and how much we're learning about how our brains function, and not just these mechanisms and governance in systems, but how our actual cognitive understanding of the world is shifting and changing as scientists realize that the dendrites inside of mice are not the same functioning as the dendrites and the neurons inside of human brains. And I think we're going to have a huge paradigm shift in the next 3 to 5 years of everything we thought reality was, and what bearing witness to what it actually is. And I'm watching that take place in every sector of every industry, from healthcare to automotive industry to energy to you name it, food production, et cetera, and so forth. And I think the growing pains, just like my child is going through, humanity and society and the global infrastructure changes are just as painful, because it is a growth spurt. And it's really hard to grasp what the hell is happening in the whole world when a ship in the Suez Canal, blocks up and it messes up the whole system. What this system is going through real growth changes, and the needs. I just looked at the population of the Earth when I was born was 3.7 billion people, and it's now at 7.8 billion, and expected to grow up to 12 billion in the next 20 years. And that's with a decline. The population is declining right now, but it's still going to grow exponentially over the next 20 years. So that is what I think everyone's freaked out about, is if we get to 12 billion and we don't fix the problems we have now, can we sustain life on this planet? And I think that's what's freaking everybody out, especially with what we're seeing in terms of the changes just in the last 20 to 50 years of how the climate has been shifting and changing, with going from, like I said, I'm 48 years old. So in the last 48 years, we went from 3.7 billion human beings with certain types of needs in 1973 as they are in 2021. So what is our needs going to be 20 years from now? And is this a sustainable path if we keep consuming at the level we've been consuming at since the 1980s? It's just we need to maybe slow it down a little bit in our consumption and our wrecking of the earth. And if we can figure that out globally and come to some sort of agreement that we do want to be around and we do want to have harmony with each nation and each city and each little local area that's being governed by mayors and governors, and if we want to actually help each other, as opposed to just, fuck you, you did it wrong, you guys suck, you're a shithole nation, fuck you, Haiti. Or, hey, you are actually someone, I'm using Haiti as an example because Haiti was actually, in 1915, the United States government went down there and got involved in that country. And what is the United States doing with the 180 military bases around the world? How are they helping those people? And how are they working with the UN? And how are we all working together? I think that's the real question is, are we looking out for each other, or are we just in our own best interest so that we can consume and rape each other's resources and get what we need out of those countries that aren't technically our own because we call ourselves nation states? That to me is the big paradigm shift that needs to happen. Sorry for the rant, but that's what's on my mind. Thank you. I'm complete.
Josh asked, how do we slow down consumption? And that ties directly into the quote that I had Sam pull up about how fulfilled or, how much meaning a person had in their life. So I'm always baffled why we don't put more energy into that.
Well, maybe we do. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, that's okay. But again, I would start just with our little group. I don't know that we do. I really don't. I mean, again, I'm coming from my perspective, and I'll go back to 3 years. There were times that you, Josh, and I, and Colin, we would talk on the phone, different ideas, different kind of fun things to do. But yet there was never any, like actually moving forward in something that could have had a positive effect and would have been fun. So what I'm saying is, if we're not doing it in a small group of 8, where we're helping each other to come alive in whatever way they need to come alive, how do we expect anything bigger to scale? I don't see it.
Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I just keep thinking about how people form communities. And one way that's always worked is they kind of do a belief system with some sort of religious background or belief in a higher entity or some power that's greater, so they can be a disciple of that philosophy, doctrine, dogma. And then through that, there's this whole other layer of let's do tidings and help the community and help each other. So there's like a 2-level thing. So Stacy, like I remember you asking me to do a play and talked about, doing a play, but I never knew where the play was going to be received. Who else is involved in the community of the play itself, what my role is in terms of helping that play to be established. Is it writing the actual words of the play, the music? I offered before to write music because I love doing that, but I don't know if we like the same music. I think that's where I got stifled with you, is I'm a hip hop guy. Like if you said, yo, do a rap song about, I forgot the name of what was it? Do you remember, Stacy, that play the song idea you had?
I'm even going back to way before that, to when we were talking about a different idea that, that Colin was on board with. It had to do with, we all came up with it in different ways, so maybe you won't see it this way, but it was about a call that would take place at a certain time. We had different variations on it. So I'm not talking about anything big, but what I would say to you is, no, not the song from that, Barry, what you're talking about, that came way after. I mean, again, I have a million ideas of ways that I thought would bring different people into what they like to do. But even when, so Josh, you said, maybe I didn't know that you like hip hop. Well, maybe I did know that you like hip hop, and maybe that was part of it. And
no, I didn't say that. I didn't say that you didn't know that. I just said to collaborate. I've tried to collaborate with other people on different genres of music, and I've done successfully in many genres, but the most successful genre is hip hop. I didn't say you didn't know I like hip hop.
Right. So in anything that I want to collaborate on, it usually has to do with bringing things that normally you wouldn't think would fit together and finding a way to have them fit together. But to my original point is just, if we in this small group aren't doing the things that we say we want to see happen on a bigger scale, how are we expecting it to happen? Like a different example, Barry put in the chat how frustration comes from not meeting goals. So I keep hearing a goal is on governance and deciding how we're going to do things. So earlier on the call, I brought up a conversation about these calls and how the recording should be used and different ways to differentiate what should be transparent, what shouldn't. And we couldn't even come to some sort of resolution there. Like, I'd like to, like, it would have been nice if we could have at least kept discussing it and see if we could come up with something that everybody, at least on this call, was comfortable with. But we never got to that. We never got to what I think could have been a simple resolution. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm curious, why do you think, and this isn't like making judgments or anything, this is a genuine curiosity.
Sure.
What helps to get to that point in your understanding of how to make that a success of working and collaborating together? Because I've heard, you know,
Doing
very
it.
clearly.
The process of doing it.
Right, so the agreement that someone's going to bottom line it and do it. And if everyone else fails, they're going to take on all that responsibility to get it done.
No, it's really just about the process that we didn't complete. If we would have just
But no one's agreed upon a process. I just want to be clear, as we did the agile process, and I asked Sam, how many people does it need to do an agile process? He said, you can do it with one. So I said, okay, cool. And I left and I did it with one. So I've done it. I
Me
just didn't
too.
do it with the group. Colin did the same. We just didn't collaborate because we didn't need to. I didn't need you guys' help to do what I needed to do. I just did it instead of.
No, but this is different because I was particularly talking about these recordings that happen in GC and with GCC members that we're recording. So these are things that affect all of us. And I think, based on what I understand our values to be, is that we should agree on where those boundaries are, what are our expectations of each other regarding what we do with these calls. Not a law that you're going to get punished for breaking, but at least, you know, do we have a shared understanding of our intention? And I don't know that we do. And we can't even get to that on a call.
Do you want to go around the room and have a shared understanding? Because my understanding is that Sam's going to record it, post it up on his YouTube, and that's where I left off. Meaning, I asked him if he needed help with that, if I needed to download all the videos, if we need to put it in a trust.
So Josh, if you and I have a call, and we've had calls in the past that I believe are recorded, probably, you know, going back years ago, does that mean that every one of those calls that we had, which we were hanging out, but because we agreed to record them are there, does that mean that Sam's going to now go post them on GCC?
No, it was Tammy and Sam that decided to start recording years ago. I was not involved in that decision or that agreement. They asked if I was okay with them recording me. So I gave them my livelihood, yes, you can record that, and yes, you can post it. And I gave that agreement, but I didn't give an agreement between me and you and very specific context of what was being recorded. I left it open for that. Nobody owns it. And I think the very problem is, and I've been saying this for years, if there's not an entity created that we all agree upon outside of us that owns the rights and the content to any assets created by us as a group, meaning a recording of these calls, then we are stuck because nobody actually owns this emarcation or demarcation of this moment that's being recorded.
And I agree with that, but I'm focusing on something even smaller than that. I'm just talking amongst friends. Is that recording between you and I available?
I didn't record anything between you and I.
It's a risky thing, and this is where I had a lot of frustration. So going
wait
around
a second,
the room,
Colin, I don't want to have confusion. I just want to be
Go
clear.
ahead.
Are you talking, Stacy, about the GCC recordings, which Tammy and Sam decided to record and put into a shared group folder that we all have access to, and also on Facebook? I just want to be clear about what we're doing here.
There are also, well, I'm talking in general, but there are also other recordings that are done between members of the GCC not necessarily in the Thursday, the Friday, or the Saturday, or the Sunday spot. Not talking about those 4 spots, which I think that's pretty clear. They're going to be recorded, they're going to be shared. I'm talking about many of us had one-on-ones and we record them. And the reason I record them is because that was my understanding that that was the protocol to record them. So now I wanted to have a conversation which really goes to values and just discussion and just getting to understand what people's expectations are. And it really doesn't, it kind of just fizzles out and we can't even, it would be nice to have one thing that we say, okay, so your expectations this, yours is this, yours is that. Is there a way that we can come up with something that encompasses all of it, all of those things? That's it, something simple.
I'm open to that if we want to go around the room. I think that's great. Does anyone else want to discuss what their expectations are? I'd like to hear. I'll be quiet.
Sure. This burns for me because I don't want to misrepresent somebody, and I want to have a quality knowledge trail. So this is kind of in between public and private, and we're talking about curation, and we're talking about trust, and we're talking about trust between individuals. On the we side of things, I'm talking simply, I can point to something very concrete. There is the GCC we that I think could be an entity that better manages the video pile. And I'm doing my part for that. And I think it's pretty interesting that it may have value, but I think respecting the fact that it has value may be the most important thing, because then it will feed back into what we do in the future. So that's the memory part of taking it important. So if it's just put onto a pile and forgotten like trash, then we're not going to respect these as much as if we know there's 700 people watching these. So professionally, let's get 7 million people watching these. I don't know, whatever. Let's not worry about is it going to have an economic component, and let's in my mind work more towards the respecting what it is that we're finding frustrating bringing to the table, or what we're having good success at bringing to the table. What I'm hearing is a lot of frustration, and so hence unblocking. So I can tell you what my frustrations are. Josh says, let's go around the table or tell me what my successes are, or what it is that I think that could bring value. What puzzle piece?
I think, not to interrupt you, Colin, but I think this expectation was what Stacy was asking. What are your expectations with those?
Well, the example I have is I have a conversation with 5 or 6 people. The last one I recorded was one I had with Heiner, probably, 3-4 weeks ago. And we had a private conversation. And, I don't plan on releasing that to anybody. Now, when I was in a conversation with Barry, the same trust isn't established. So it's different between me and Barry than it is between me and Heiner. In fact, I find going back through the video list a project of trying to look for good things as opposed to trying to prove where people were wrong. And, maybe we can learn how to agree better. And I think that's, when it comes down to this protocol idea, it's about agreements, right? Like both ends of the signal chain have to agree what the protocol is. So different conversations have different protocols. That's all I'm trying to highlight, that one tiny aspect. And if we could appreciate that, then we could line up the different containers and respect the boundaries and know if this is recorded, if it's not recorded. But what are you here to do? If you're recorded saying a whole lot of stuff that you can't remember what it is you said, then what does it matter? But if you're trying to hone a message that means something very much to you, you should know what you've said and hopefully getting feedback how you can say it better. So agile project of one. I'd like to give you guys another update on the project that I'm doing, but my frustration is to appreciate the GCC, we and I, for what I see it as. So how can I share that context of what I see it as, and how does that align with what Heiner sees? And I tried really hard to align with Doug, and Doug, I think, took offense to me trying to align boundaries. I just didn't do it right. It didn't work well when I'm trying to ask Doug questions. So I'm trying to listen to Stacy. How could I ask these questions better? Or Marshall Rosenberg, how can I say without any judgment in it? What does it mean what is my frustration? What do I need? What am I asking for? So I'm asking for people to appreciate what I'm trying to do. I'm asking for people to understand what it is that I'm seeing. So that's sharing visions, which is, I think, and Stacy said, well, what was the vision we were sharing about the little thing that I remember I was so excited about between Josh and Colin? Well, yeah, what was that? And how did that fall off the rails? And I think a lot of what I said then still lives for me. And when Stacy, I think, had a bit of a down, what do you say? Not a downtime, but a quiet time where she wasn't coming to the show. Yeah, a hiatus. Yeah. I talked to her privately and I said, look, if you've got a good idea, it's still a good idea. Bring it back and stand with your idea. I'm willing to help you with your idea, whether I agree and understand it or not. If you believe it's a good idea, bring it. And that's what we should be helping each other with, I figure. And something about wicked challenge, there is a conflict, as Stacy says, that there is a bit of siloing happening if you're not careful in the way you look at the framework between what Doug has done and what Sam is doing. But I still believe it's going to come together because I think they're both necessary parts. It's how do we respect the protocol so the wrong messages aren't going to the wrong server. The messages I'm trying to send to one context are not adapted properly to make it into the protocol to get into Doug's ears in a way that we can collaborate. He's suspicious. He doesn't trust me, or he doesn't understand me. So that's the things we got to break down. Like, what is it that I'm trying to say? How can you understand it? Thank you.
Barry and then Heiner had to go. Barry, just one thing I just want to say real quick. As far as a good idea being a good idea, maybe, but timing is everything. Our lives are changing. Situations change at every moment. So one plan may be perfect for that moment in time, not necessarily another. Barry.
Yeah,
it's evolving, definitely evolving. Yes.
There's an old saying, there's a time and place for everything. And actually, Alex brought up a lyric. Everything has a season. There's a season for everything, and everything takes its turn. Actually, that sentiment is in Ecclesiastes. It's attributed to Solomon, who's considered a pretty wise leader. And it's in a book that's called Ecclesiastes, which is a very interesting word because it's a Greek word, and it literally means a gathering, like a meeting or a conversation, discussion session. The word Ecclesiastes just is the Greek word for let's all get together and have a conversation with an agenda, with a stated topic and agenda. And Ecclesiastes is the anglicized word from the Greek for having a meeting. In the original Hebrew, the title is Kohelet. And Kohelet really means the person who called the meeting, the organizer. And so instead of Ecclesiastes, the meeting, it's named after, I'm calling a meeting, I'm the chair, and I'm convening a meeting, and I'm calling you in to gather together to discuss this topic. This is the agenda. And everybody who's interested in this agenda, for example, what are our shared values? Or what are our shared goals? Let's have a meeting to discuss our individual values and goals. And across the collection of individual values and goals, do we have any values and goals that we share in common? We can collaborate to achieve goals where we have shared values. And that's what Ecclesiastes was about. Solomon says, let's get together, let's go over our individual personal values, our individual goals, and find out what do we have in common that we can collaborate on and achieve. He was the chair who called the meeting, the gathering. And Sam keeps saying, what's our topic? What's our agenda? What do we, if everybody comes to an unannounced random gathering with no particular agenda or topic, then it's going to just be all over the map, which is what happens a lot in GCC. I'll stop there.
That's it. What's the agenda and what's the protocol? And you've got yourself a system for conversation. Starting anyway, a fair starting spot. Right? If the protocol's off or the agenda's off, it's not going to work so well.
Heiner and then Sam had their hand up.
Please take notes that protocol is not just a technical protocol. It is a code of behavior about civility. And we have it especially in diplomacy, that it is very, very important to get the nuances, the atmosphere of the very different parties into the same room. And I really urge you to look, maybe with me tomorrow, into our deep-rooted original metaphors. So we easily say we are not on one page. So what is a room and where are the pages in that room and in the world? If we don't connect them, we just blubber with words and we say map, we say model, we say metaphor, we say protocol, and it's not concrete. And then we start making war. So anyway, I liked this session. I just wanted to say bye-bye originally, but let's have this code. Protocol might be a word which has so many nuances that people are not getting us if we don't make it concrete and show examples. Over and out, bye.
Hey, Heiner, wait. Thanks for staying twice your expected time. You said you're going to stay an hour and you actually ended up staying more than 2 hours. So
no, I was in between somewhere else.
Oh, don't tell me that now. Ay, ay, ay.
You lost your train of thought, Sam?
No, I'm trying to figure out which of those 17 different things I want to respond to first.
He's not lost the train. He's still on the train. He's just enjoying the ride.
I'm on all 17 cars, okay? So let me say, if you might recall, probably about 3 years ago was when we created this thing called the behavior experiment. And I'm bringing that up because in my mind, at least, there's a clear connection between behaviors that are being proposed now by Glenn, agreements that Stacy, for example, posted 10 of, where other people have 12 of, or Peterson has some, or, I post many of those top 10 lists for behavior, et cetera, et cetera. And that, yes, that was an attempt to say, what do you want to do? How do you want to behave? And rather than saying initially, how do we want to behave? It was more a question of how do I want to behave? I was hoping everyone would ask themselves that question. Now we got 80 or 90 such responses, but you notice that even that discussion of behavior generated what to me was active opposition and resistance. People don't want to be that transparent, So I can actually see that this notion of behavior is a touchy subject. For some, it's a very easy thing. I agree to wait for other people to talk before I do, okay? But that's something that's easy for me to say. For other people, it's, well, there's this case over here, and maybe I do, maybe I don't, and what's gonna happen if I do, and am I gonna get punished? Those implications, which I admit are brought about by the legal system that we have, are unfortunate associations we have. But it still doesn't detract from the value of being clear with your own assessment and your own intent for behavior. That was probably one thing I wanted to talk about. Another thing, and by the way, I'll make this my checkout, is there's this question about mathematics that always comes to mind. And as a mathematician, you may think that I'm being biased, but I actually don't think so. My statement is, if you can define something, if you can create a word and associate it with something, however nebulous in your experience, and if you can relate that to something else in your experience, then you've got terms and you've got relationships. And that's all math is. Math is expressions between terms that have relationships. That's all it is, okay? And being able to, in a sense, think about them. So that is my understanding of what math is. And that's what I think is probably not a common understanding of what math is. So I hear a lot of criticism about math, similarly to my previous comment about, oh, I don't need math, when I live my regular daily life. No, language is an approximation for what mathematics is precise about. And yes, people can say, oh, I love words. I love those nuances. I love putting together words in beautiful combinations. If you truly do, then you'd be struck at some of the precision and beauty and global application and insight that can be expressed in mathematical terms. Again, I sound biased to many people, especially people who are going to watch this later on. But I just wanted to clarify that's my understanding. And that's my response to people who think, oh, math is irrelevant, science is irrelevant, and you're too technical and you're not heart-centered. Farthest from the truth. I care so much that that's why I want to model it using clear expression, understand the relationships, understand the kinds of thinking, the reasoning, the modeling we can do with those associations and with those relationships. And the language for that can always be found. Either you approximate it with words, or you can actually map it into mathematics, which then gives you some really interesting, powerful tools. With that, I will check out. Thanks all.
Thanks, Sam.
Barry,
Yeah,
is it possible to build two models at once?
you can. It's not that common because it takes a lot. If you have to put 110% of your attention to build a model, it's hard to divide that. Sometimes you can.
That's a good question. I never expected that question. Go ahead, Heiner.
You see, this is my world. When we believe that there are, beside mathematical models, also built models, cognitive models, then we can link them. We can build them. We can build them immersing into each other to really have realities, but also augmented virtual realities. And this is a new age coming up the last 30 years, how to share fantasy, how to share imagination. And that's why I, in the tradition of architects and artists, believe the built models, the drafted maps have lots of potential, and not just the words when you don't know how the words are immanent, what is their phenomenological quality, and how can that help us to communicate better?
Joshua has his hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to share what Heiner was just saying is actually what I'm doing right now. I'm working with the Facebook company and their project called Oculus. And they built a beta world called Horizons, which is Facebook groups in virtual reality, where you have hands and a body and a virtual body, and you move around a space. So I'm building two models, which is one in the virtual world to mirror ones in the physical world. so that as we create things in the virtual world, if it's something that people agree on and like and feel that it's something that they'd like to create in the physical world, they can do so, and vice versa. If we create something in the physical world that people like, we can move that over into the virtual world. And those are the two models that I'm working with in order to create the new reality that will be our new paradigm. But it helps to be able to invite someone to the virtual space because it's a lot cheaper than inviting someone to the physical space, and also the liabilities of insurance purposes, et cetera, and so forth, and transportation and all the carbon footprint that comes with the physical world. It's not going to be as good as the physical world. That's always going to be the greatest gathering. And we do have physical spaces set up. There's an art festival in Pasadena that we're setting up for next year. There's another festival in Santa Barbara next year. The Burning Man Festival hopefully will go on this year. I don't know. I have to check in with the Burning Man people, but it'll be not as big a gathering as it usually is. But all the different meeting spaces, if we can collectively meet in Mozilla is an offshoot. Most people are familiar with Firefox, not to detract, but they have a place called Mozilla Hubs, which is a virtual space that you don't need virtual reality glasses to build in. You just need a regular computer, and you can build that virtual world and put up all the assets of all the videos of GCC and create a hall that spans 3 years. And you walk down the hall and watch every video. And if they're all posted up on YouTube, you can walk down that hallway, click play on any of those videos, and have it in an open space Mozilla Hubs virtual gallery of GCC, past and present. And you can even go in on a Saturday morning and watch a real-time live video of this. If we did a Twitch or a streaming broadcast with OBC, I think Colin's familiar with that, and open broadcast that to multiple platforms. And the biggest change that I see that I haven't heard us talk about in the last 4 years is most of the younger generation is restreaming real-time reality to small silos of groups of friendship. If something cool is happening on the internet, like this conversation, they're pressing a button and streaming it over to their social media platforms live. And everyone's sort of seeing what everyone thinks is important and curated both live and after the fact. So I think we're in a multi-dimensional, multimodal, what's important to whoever, being able to press a button. The new big operating system in the iOS for the iPhone is you can now watch multimedia together as a group with FaceTime, and they allows FaceTime now to go on Android devices. So only on the iOS, if you have an iPhone, I can watch either a YouTube video, Netflix, Apple TV, etc., in real time with Barry and with Stacy. And if they pause to go to the bathroom, it pauses for the whole group. So that's a new paradigm shift of real time consuming media together. And I believe that's going to change a lot. We do it, but not successfully on Zoom, and the quality isn't quite there. But if we were to have this same conversation on a Saturday, and say, Barry, you brought up Ecclesiastes, and there was a great 5-minute video explaining it, we could stop, all watch it together, and then we have a shared commons because we have a link back to that video that we can all watch at our own time. And I think that'll help for common understanding. So that's what I'm working on, is modeling both the virtual space, because I hope it doesn't take off. I hope I fail. I hope Horizons is a big failure, and I hope everyone doesn't go into virtual reality. But in case they do, I'm preparing for that and building something that I hope has value. So when it does happen and my daughter is 3 or 4 years old and she's in these virtual spaces, I can say, hey, come check out some conversations with Heiner and Sam and Colin as she becomes 5, 6 years old, and she could maybe learn from you guys. I'm hoping this is for the next generations, that they can learn from these conversations. And that's why I'm here, is not just to share for the future generations, but to learn from my understanding to help benefit the hundreds and thousands of groups that I'm currently involved in. Anything good that comes out of this conversation, I will be on Clubhouse. And if any of these topics come up, I'll share what Sam said, or I'll share what Alex said, to help further the understanding of the collective consciousness of different groups around the world, and people that are in positions of power to influence and change different nation states and different villages and cities and communities around the world. So that's my checkout, is modeling both in the virtual space and the real world. Thanks guys for a nice Saturday. I like your shirt, Heiner.
Don't forget liberty, whatever that means.
Liberties.
Go ahead, Alex.
If I take a liberty, it's doing something forcefully without the consent of the others. I'm taking liberty to express something that I haven't been given permission to express, but I'm hoping that people will accept that as something legitimate. Hoping that people will accept it as something something that's got integrity. That's what I was meant to say. Over.
I just wanted to share one thing that might help other people is the biggest shift I saw with the Apple company is they're taking a page out of Zoom's ability to create a room or a space and put it on a calendar and then pop into that shared space. So they've added that into the operating system for any meetings on FaceTime. And I'm seeing that in Clubhouse as well. If you want to schedule a meeting and a time, they give you a code just like Zoom. So everyone's stealing what worked with Zoom that created such a huge change in this world and putting that into every other space where we can have multiple conversations on multiple topics scheduled for a specific date and time and whoever wants to show up. And I feel that we were way above the curve here on GCC by doing that 4 times a week 4 years ago, before the pandemic, before this all took off. We were way above the curve. And now everyone is doing that. And I don't know if we're recognizing that everyone in the world is having meetings on every topic with random people. And some of them are more disjunct and more disorganized than us. So we could maybe help those people, believe it or not. We're a little ahead of the curve. But I just want to say, anytime someone wants to schedule it, Zoom is just one of now hundreds of platforms that allow you to schedule on a calendar. And I think the biggest thing that would help the GCC is to go back. We used to have a shared calendar right pinned to the front of the Facebook page, right when you got there with the 4 meetings. And some reason that went away, I don't know. But if we had a shared calendar with 7, 9, 12, 20 meetings, I think it would gain more speed and more, not speed, I'm not looking for that word. It would gain more interaction with multiple communities outside of just the GCC, if that's our intention. I don't know if that is. Just wanted to share that. What are you sharing, Colin? I see your screen.
This is the latest version of this search tool where these are the results from the video. This one here is from Richard Feynman's corpus. It's easy to test with, runs quick. The GCC one I just had before is like, well, it's showing how scale breaks down when you have 600 videos. You know, this hallway that you're talking about, basically this is a 2-dimensional view of the hallway. And if your brain can envision the hallway, it's a lot less power and distraction just to do it in 2-dimensional, thinking in 3-dimensional. I think you're right. But 3-dimensional is cool for entertainment and fantasy. There's no question. Nothing beats.
Well,
I'd
cool
love to
thing
have
about
Oculus.
3-dimensional. Yeah, if you get an Oculus, let me know, Colin. The great thing that I notice is when you come close to someone, you can hear them. And as you walk away from them, their voice goes away. And to me, that is a dimension in real-time space that you don't get in this 2-dimensional space.
So what's going on here is I'd like to build, this is one of the things I talked to Stacy about building. And what I'd like to do is to be able to annotate and curate over these videos. You so you could basically harvest what value you want out of them. But this is the first this is the alpha, I guess, or the beta. Yeah, alpha, I would say. After this, I have to switch and modes of development. Right now, this is in the main branch. Actually, this is my development branch right now of the front end. But I'm going to have to start working on redoing the back end. So I've just branched off and made some different development branches. This is all in Keybase too. Using Git and Keybase is pretty cool. So anyway, yeah, this is hopefully coming to fruition soon. I know Barry and other people would like to have some searches. Where's the one I have here for the GCC? Yeah, I did one. You need, I need, we need was the search. So it'll find that in any of the videos. It found 6,668 matches in pretty near 600 files searched. Those words were only not mentioned in a few, and there's a few small files and miscellaneous one-on-one ones in here too. So it's not very well organized as far as being able to filter and search by date, time, show type. All that kind of stuff isn't really implemented yet. But yeah, you can. It's starting to come. This will actually load a player, and this will toggle between them. And hopefully by the end of the day, when I click on this, it'll take you to that place in the player, and you'll be able to switch back and forth. And then a few more days, there'll be some buttons and sliders where you can, mark and park interesting things and build up a knowledge trail, like's been in that background video I've had for over a year and a half. I actually like to see that thing work. So anyway, yeah, that's what that is, Josh. Thanks.
No, thank you for sharing. It looks really interesting and a lot of work. It looks like you went into it. I have to go check on the baby. I'm just saying goodbye to everyone. I didn't realize it was so much later. It's 10:41 my time.
Yes, well, interesting stories. Thanks good to see you.
Yeah, and let me know if you really do want to get on Oculus. I know it's to me it's a great time because it's a $1,200 device that they're giving for $300. They're subsidizing the cost. Yeah, it's a really
I'm
fancy
down
device.
on that.
Yeah,
I'll do a GoFundMe and pay you guys back. Get me one like right away.
All right, well, I'll call you after this call and we'll make that happen. Sounds good.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, all right.
And they have a scripting program inside of it with interactions and scripting, so it's sky's the limit. So you can make things interact.
Actually, I got to do grandfather duty, so definitely get a hold of me, and hopefully before the snow flies, I'll be in an Oculus. I don't know how long this deal's on for, but yeah, let's get her done.
Sounds good. And just to signal to everybody, the Clubhouse is on Android and iPhone, and there's a GCC inside of the Clubhouse. So there's all
maybe
those
we should do a
happening there.
Maybe next barn racing should be Josh touring us into Clubhouse.
If that's what people want.
30-minute segment would be fun. Yeah.
Get
agenda.
Everyone, okay, sounds good.
See you around.
See you guys later. Cheers.
You still there, Stacy? Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm gonna sign off now. Goodbye.
Well,
I went and got some apple pie. I got some tea.
I guess as the astronaut says, it's lunchtime.
10, 9, 8, bon voyage. 7, 6, 5, as they do in cinema.
Have a good